It is a tremendous pleasure for me to welcome to the program back but not a frequent guest, but a semi-frequent, I guess, but always just a cherished guest to the program, Fran Lebowitz. Fran, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
It's been a long time since we spoke, and I want to just get your take. You know, there of literally the hundreds, maybe even thousands of people I've interviewed over the past 7 or 8 years. There are a couple of things that you have told me on the radio that have just resonated with me tremendously. And one of them was that if we were ever going to see any type of change in this country, it's going to have to come from young people, and it's going to have to come from culture. Um, can you elaborate on that? Do you still feel that way?
Yes, I still feel that way. Well, clearly it's not going to come from old people, and clearly it's not going to come from politics. What I meant by culture was actual culture. I know we're not supposed to use that word anymore. I meant actually from artists. I know that we use that word way too much, but because what I believe I was saying to you, and I'm pretty sure this is true because I haven't been able to change what I was saying. I'd love to. But it's just that, we live in this merry-go-round of nostalgia, and that is certainly true of, the culture, if you want to call it that, and it's certainly true of politics. I mean, this is the most retrograde era. It's shocking. At the same time, it's a truly revolutionary era. You think people might want to take advantage of that. But every solution for everything is a backward solution. It should be like it was, even this Occupy Wall Street. I keep hearing from people, this is like the 60s, this is like the 70s, but it's not. And it shouldn't be, because this era is not like that. I mean, there were good things about the old times, but not everything, because it's led to these times.
I'm curious about that notion because I think like the interesting thing is that much of the way that the mainstream press and even I've noticed it from the liberal establishment have attempted to attack Occupy Wall Street as being hippies. And I don't think that Occupy Wall Street people perceive themselves that way. And certainly what they're protesting against is not the same genre. I mean, we're not talking about a war, and we're not talking about social emancipation. We're talking about economic issues primarily.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that these people want in, not out. That's the primary difference. I mean, the 60s, or whatever you want to call them, which of course mostly took place during the 70s and mostly didn't take place at all the way people imagine, was about wanting out. Not wanting in. These people want, as far as I could tell, want in. Meaning, I'm not hearing any particularly radical notions from any of these people. Maybe they have them, but no one's told me. They're complaining about the present time, which, who could defend this, by the way? The interesting thing to me is that there's not a real defense of the status quo because it's indefensible. It is totally indefensible. For instance, today, all day long, what I've been thinking about, where is the mayor? Where's the mayor? We don't see hide nor hair of the mayor, who, the thing I've enjoyed most, I have to say, about Occupy Wall Street, because I am a vengeful and superficial person, is to see Bloomberg not have any idea which way to go with this thing. He does have no idea what to say, what to do. We know that, what he really feels, because, I mean, this mayor is not even in the 1%. He's in the 1% of the 1%. We have a mayor who is so rich that he will not live in a place actually called Gracie Mansion. It's not nice enough for him. And he has not in any way attracted the ire of these people, which is shocking to me. I mean, when I walk around and sometimes these kids talk to me, I say, go to Bloomberg's house. Go, the day they went to rich people's houses, I said, go to Bloomberg's house, and this kid said to me, no, he's okay. He said we could stay. I said, what are you talking about? This is his city. Anyone can stay. This is not his estate. To me, it's absurd. But today, we don't see him at all. In the last few days, we haven't seen him at all. We've seen his proxy, what's his name, Wolfson, and we've seen the new doe-eyed Christine Quinn. all of a sudden champion of the people. Not in fact his henchman or henchwoman, as she's been for the last 40 years of his mayoralty, who helped him overturn in 2 elections in order to have this 3rd term, and we haven't seen him all day long. So to me, you don't have to be young to hate what's going on. You do have to be young to sleep outside, however. That I would have to give.
Yeah, well, I will say I think Mayor Bloomberg, as of whatever it was, 48 hours ago, when he ordered the riot geared police to go and evict the protesters, I suspect now there's not the same warm feelings towards Bloomberg that there were just 3 days ago.
Yeah, but if they were more informed, there never would have been. And
Right.
not just the Occupy Wall Street. I mean, he is a central villain in all of this. I mean, he is a zillionaire. And people, basically until this second, it seemed like the American people, all of them, no matter what age they were, had a reverence for this. Because I know this, because you constantly hear the word earn before the word billion. And really, no one earns $1 billion. You steal $1 billion. You earn $10 an hour. It's absurd. So I would like to see some ire, in his direction. And I would also, people should notice, I mean, I don't know if they do because they may be preoccupied with, greater ideals, but the response of the city in general is a response having totally to do with jockeying position for the next election, which everyone thinks because they wish was this month, but in fact is 2 years from now. And that is why you see Christine Quinn practically crying, standing next to the city councilman who got arrested. His name I don't know because I never heard of him before. And she was like Bambi next to him. I mean, she is an architect of this. And she's wanting to take it over and continue it. This is about real estate. That's really what it's about. This park, Zuccotti Park, let me assure you, no New Yorker ever heard of it. Did you ever hear of this?
Never.
No, they keep saying, and especially on national news, they keep saying Zuccotti Park, as if everyone, who grew up in New York cavorted in this park as a child. This is some sort of real estate deal. That's why, it's bookmarked in the way that it is. That's why he had to let them in, couldn't throw them out because they made a deal with the city in the 60s, I believe, we can keep this little piece of property for whatever they were hoping to keep it for, which, believe me, was not to allow, the free exchange of ideas, but we have to keep it open, which, by the way, the mayor has closed the parks at midnight. There's curfews in every park in New York City at midnight. He doesn't have a right to do that. They're public parks. That's what public means. If you're crazy enough to want to go in Central Park at 3 in the morning, you have that right. But no one ever protests this. So, of course, people my age, or at least myself, we were delighted to see this, to see the beginning of this. Many people, say, what do they want? What do they want? They don't seem to know exactly what they want. Everyone my age says it doesn't matter because the thing that I see that is like when I was young is the pandering to people who are young from people my age, which is merely like wanting them to like you. Where they want them. So they say, well, we think it's great that they have no agenda. I have actually no opinion as to what their agenda is or not their agenda. I, unfortunately, am not in a position to spend all my time worrying about other people's agenda. I still have my own. So, but I would like to see the mayor. I mean, the mayor, I don't understand where he is.
I imagine he is in a bunker somewhere, just watching maybe the live stream on his computer of what's going.
I mean, I hope that, that this has an effect. And if we live in an environment where people are so. I can't even think of the word, not even surrounded. We live in an environment that is just basically a media environment, no matter what kind of media it is. And so that's the way that people kind of gauge things. How much play is it getting on this? What are people saying on that? But that really is not the important thing. It seems like the important thing. In fact, it seems like the only thing. But that is not the important thing. And meanwhile, maybe someone could figure out, like, what is Congress doing during this? That's kind of the important thing.
I mean, is that the only important thing? I mean, is it in terms of like Congress's reaction to this, or?
No, I'm not talking about their reaction to this. I'm talking about, listen, this Congress, as far as I could tell, is a criminal enterprise, pure and simple. I mean, to me, this is like the 3-card Monte games we no longer have in Times Square. They probably, and I say they, because, to me they're almost, in a kind of cohesive body, at the Democrats and the Republicans. And, probably while everyone's attention is on this, because this is, the kind of thing people like to cover, this has a certain kind of excitement to it, they're doing something and it's not good.
Right. Well,
whatever they're doing is wrong. This I know. It's like when I was a little kid and, your parents would say, the kids are too quiet.
Right.
They're up to something. And so these people are too quiet. They're up to something, and it is not good.
Well, we're just literally less than a week away from when the so-called super committee is going to either make their deadline or not make their deadline to cut essentially Social Security and Medicare, which seems to be that if there is a deal, the most likely deal to take place out of Congress. And of course, many people talked about John Kerry being put on there as a way of being the most liberal voice, but it seems like he is going to be out in front in terms of trying to make that deal. And he could very well be the seventh vote that passes it through the super committee.
Yes, that's what it looks like to me. I mean, but, first of all, has anyone mentioned, a super committee? What do they think Congress is supposed to be? This is absurd. This is as if you, hire a plumber for your house, and he hires a plumber. Right. You say, did you fix the broken pipe? And he goes, no, I'm waiting for the guy that I hired to fix the broken pipe. This is just a way of passing the buck.
Yes, and I think that's actually sort of explicitly the point of it. I mean, that's why they're not subject to the filibuster, not subject to any amendments in the House. But I agree with you that what's happening in Congress is really important. But it seems like there has been little ability of the people, whether you want to talk about the mass of people as reflected in what they want, as reflected in polls in terms of protecting things like our social insurance, or even the policy elite, whether you're talking about economists who say this is not the time for austerity, or frankly, real world experiences. You look at what's happening in Britain, you look at what's happening in Spain in terms of austerity. There has been nothing that has been able to impact these people. And part of that, I think, is because of the greater influence that money has in our politics. And so what's left at that point?
Yes, well, that's the main thing that's wrong. I mean, we could, when I say we, I mean, Americans, we could take this away. I mean, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I mean, I am not a person easily shocked, but the thing probably of the last 20 years that most shocked me was the decision of the Supreme Court, Bush v. Gore. That really shocked me, okay? And there was no outcry about that. If a zillion people had gone to Washington, there would have been some kind of outcry. There would have been some kind of change. People, you can't sit around, for 30 years and expect nothing to happen. Expect nothing bad to happen. You know that from your own life. So that yes, it's money. It's money. It's not that complicated. It's money. But truly, I have to say that when Obama was running for the presidency, I was not a huge champion of Obama. I voted for him. But the reason was I knew he was to the right of me on what were then called domestic economic issues. And I knew that because of the age difference. I mean, I don't know. No, he's 10 years younger than I am, which, and by the way, it is one of the worst things on the planet to have a president younger than you. And he is just that generation. That's just that 10 years. It could even be 5 years, of people who believe there's such a thing as clean money. Clean money is like clean coal. Believe in things like public-private partnerships. This is a belief of all people Obama's age or younger, which are most people. Now it's most people, and it's certainly most people who, are active in these things. And this is not true. There's no such thing. All these words that companies started using maybe 20 years ago, which I used to say, these are the words of poets. Vision. Businessmen don't have visions. They don't have vision. It's like when Steve Jobs died. You would have think, I don't know, that Leonardo died. I mean, businesses have one goal: make a profit. That is a perfectly appropriate goal for business. It is an awful goal for anything else. And so when you mix these two things together, for instance, privatize the prison system, The prison system, yes, what could be worse? The prison system already a horrible thing that you have to have, and then let's introduce the profit motive. So these things have to be disentangled. Nothing good will happen until they are. Nothing good will happen until people say you cannot mix these two things. No, we don't want private money in the public school system. We want public money in the public school system. When you hear a rich person say they're giving back, here's my advice to them. Don't take to begin with.
When did money become? I mean, I know that money has always been an ascendant value in our society. Maybe it hasn't, but that's my presumption. But it seems to me that at least in my lifetime, there has been no, or at least in my adult lifetime, there has been no counterculture where money is irrelevant. I'm not saying like that has been anti-money, but it seems to me that in American history, we have always had a culture embedded in America. Maybe it was a very small one, maybe it was just urban, but which had values where money was not the ascendant value. Am I right in believing that at the very least up until Occupy Wall Street, and maybe even including, but I don't think so, but that there's been an absence of whether you want to call them, artists or communists or bohemians or yippies. There's been no culture that is saying that we have values where we can judge each other distinct from your capacity to make money.
Yes, well, there used to be competing values in the culture. They were not the sole property of bohemians, by the way. My theory about this, I'm so glad you asked because no one ever does. My theory about this, which probably sounds like a crackpot theory, is that, I'm not saying this started, but to me, one of the real landmarks of this is when doctors and lawyers started to be allowed to advertise. Oh. Now, you are too young probably to remember when they weren't.
No, oddly enough,
okay?
I was raised by a pack of lawyers, and it is the one thing I remember. It was like somebody had died in my household on that day.
Because that's right. Well, doctors and lawyers, and by the way, doctors and lawyers, I'm assuming, especially lawyers, I'm guessing, fought for this. Okay, but they weren't allowed to advertise because they were considered to be above commerce. Above. Okay, not below, but above commerce. And that's why they were called the professions, okay, instead of the businessmen. And there was no such thing as a for-profit hospital. It wasn't allowed. It wasn't that doctors, were rich compared to other people. They weren't rich, the way they can become now. No one was. Nor were lawyers. And also, there were no lawyer jokes then because people respected lawyers. Okay? People don't respect lawyers now because who could? People don't respect doctors now either because you see them, advertising and there used to be just competing values. Not everybody wanted to be rich, or maybe everyone wanted to be rich, but there were other ways. This is, human beings are not your finest species. A lot of this is about status. There were other ways to gain status. You had status as a doctor, you saved lives. You made more money than other people in a little town. The doctor would be one of the richest people, but you lawyers, were not poverty-stricken, but that was not the point of it. That was not the point of the respect, not at all, not at all. And now that doesn't exist anymore. And when I was young, when I first came to New York, I didn't even, of the friends that I had when I was young, some of them were rich. It took me like forever to notice this. Like, they weren't driving cabs like I was. No one talked about it. It wasn't really of interest to us. It just wasn't. The thing about money is that it's not that interesting. If you put it this way, what is money? Math. How fascinating is that? But the entire country now has a reverence for it, It's replaced every other value in the culture, including religious values. I'm not talking about the crazy religious values people hold now. And I think one of the reasons for this extremism in religion is because to make noise over the money. The sound of money in this country is deafening. And it, of course, spread all around the globe, because there's nothing more contagious than a bad idea. A bad idea spreads in 1 second. A good idea takes centuries to bring people around to. So, yes, there used to be competing values. They're not here any longer. It's very hard. You certainly can't restore values. It's not like a piece of furniture, But the one thing that there are a lot of things about Occupy Wall Street that, are not jibe with me. I'm not as democratic as these people are. I'm not as interested in other people's opinions. And this is not confined to Occupy Wall Street, But the idea that they have no hierarchy, which is a very old idea, of course, and by the way, in the end, not a very workable idea. The reason that it's a good idea, this moment for these people, is because when there's no hierarchy, when there's no leader or no dominant force, you have to have something else to show. It's not just automatic. So everyone is hoping, I assume, at least I am hoping, that something like that will come out of this, But if it doesn't, people at this point have no choice but to have some other values, because I have really bad news for everyone. There's no money left. They took it all.
Now, I just want to remind people we're talking to Fran Lebowitz. She's the author of Metropolitan Life and Social Studies, and subject of a documentary by Martin Scorsese that is still available. I think it's HBO, entitled Public Speaking. So, but Fran, I want to get back to this because I cannot tell you how much I agree with this notion of the corruption of the professions. I do remember distinctly in my house, I was raised by a pack of lawyers. I remember, I don't know what age I was, but I remember the day that lawyers could advertise, because my father thought this was just the end of the universe, and it was
and he was right.
And I think he was right. But what led to this? And I think we saw this with journalism. I think we saw it with every single profession where things that were, I guess, on some level, avocations, some type of calling in some way, became just commercialized and commodified, and where that value came from rather than status in the society, because that's exactly, I grew up basically thinking there were two ways to make money. It was either you become an attorney or you sell cars, and that was basically the division. You're either doing this because a profession that is part of the fabric of society, or it's just one just to make money. And what led to? What was there a cork that was sort of like pulled out of the bottle and all this came out? Was it just sort of an inevitability of capitalism? It gets to a certain point and it begins to eat away at the fiber of society. What led to that moment where you had those many lawyers or doctors who wanted to advertise?
I don't know. I was myself, I think. I don't know what year that was, but if I wasn't a child, I was a young person. I don't know exactly what led to it, but I can assure you what led to it was lawyers and or doctors who wanted it. It's like airline deregulation. It's like all this deregulation. The airlines fought for deregulation. The airlines were deregulated not by Reagan, but by Jimmy Carter, which no one seems to remember. They fought for this. They finally got it. Let me assure you, you probably don't remember flying before deregulation, but before airline deregulation, airlines were not allowed to compete on price. It was against the law. That was the regulation. Every single ticket to every single place was the same price. If you missed your plane, to L.A. On one airline, the other airline happy to take your ticket, it was the exact same price. Hence, they competed on service. I'm sure you don't remember this, but they used to have ads, fly with us, we have steak. No, fly with us, we have lobster. They fought for it, and I am positive, even though I do not know this, that airlines were generally more profitable. But what they weren't were open to everybody. Obviously, it was expensive to fly. Everyone wanted to fly. Now everyone does fly. Just at a point in time where, let's face it, there's no place to go. It's a horrible mass transit system. It's very bad for the environment, if people still care about this at all. But the airlines fought for it, and now they're stuck with it. And when there's all this kind of so-called competition, for things, people who are younger than I am, who really, seem to be consumed by, acquiring services and objects and things like that, they spend an amount of time. When there was one phone company, which, believe me, we all hated, that was a phone company. You got your phone bill, that was the phone bill. I'm sure it was unfair, but that was it. But here's what you didn't do. Spend your precious time looking for phone plans.
Right.
When there's a lot, what we have now is a tremendous amount of choice, that is completely ersatz. Really, in the end, who cares what phone company you have? I don't. What kind of phone you have? What difference does it make? But people spend a lot of time doing this. People spend a lot of time looking for cheap airline tickets, too. You only have so much time in life. I am going to tell this to anyone who's younger than me, which is probably everyone listening. Yes, the great thing about being young is you have time to waste. Time is the wealth of youth. But really to waste it on looking for a cheap airline ticket, really it's better off to waste it as we did in promiscuity.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things just one of the afflictions is that we have basically been taught that real achievement comes in your capacity as a consumer.
Yes. Well, there was I don't know at what point, people started not minding, being called consumers as opposed to citizens. I believe that the idea of basing the economy on people buying things happened after the Second World War. It is, and that is why, if people would think for 1 second, when they read this stuff or hear this stuff, that is why this economy is not going to be restored, because the people can buy things in one of two ways. They can afford to pay for them, which was never the case. It was never the case. This, so-called great economy that we had, during the Clinton era, this was a debt-based economy.
Right.
So it was never the case that people could have all these things, and pay for them. So it was a case where, for a certain amount of time, they let them charge them, and then they can't charge them anymore. And now there's no jobs. So this is not coming back. Things are not going to come back. Things have to be new. I keep hearing, there's people that are very well motivated, people that, you feel, an emotional connection to, who say things, we have to bring back, factories in the Midwest and things like that. That's not going to happen. But also, here's what's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that suddenly the population, which is composed mostly of average people, because that's what average means, is suddenly going to be composed of people who are, mathematical geniuses. This problem is that all the work that average people can do, really, no one needs to be done anymore because these machines do this average work. But above average people are very few. And mostly it seems, and this is really something that is, I think, morally contemptible. Many of these people have spent the last 20 or 30 years just, instead of thinking up actually new great things, thinking up new horrible things. Financial instruments that are not only non-productive but are incredibly destructive, or little variations on products. Everyone loves these things. I know they love them. That is why everyone, goes into mourning when Steve Jobs dies. But these are not major contributions, and this is not going to solve the problem. Well, the problem is that, first of all, people have to be willing to say they're average. The average Joe, a phrase that doesn't exist anymore, has disappeared. That disappeared and been replaced by this word middle class, which is not true and never was. One of the things that people in this country did was always call what in Europe was called the working class the middle class. We never had a working class here after the Second World War. People who worked in factories were considered middle class people. It doesn't matter, in a certain way. People can call themselves what they like, but it is not true.
And what are the implications of calling it the middle class as opposed to the working class? I mean, because...
Well, the implication is that if everyone who was in the working class called themselves the working class, they would have noticed right away that there was no work. Okay? Instead of waiting till now to notice that there's no middle. Okay? It took a lot longer to notice there was no middle than to notice there was no work. And that was the work that disappeared first, because those were the easier things to replace with machines. Obviously, if someone does a kind of a job, on an assembly line, that is a job that has already, been sliced and diced, by like Henry Ford, so that, it's a simplified work, a very, by the way, unsatisfying kind of work for human beings, that work disappeared first. The actual middle class didn't care because they weren't doing it, So if the people in the working class had known they were in the working class, which is actually, like I said, a horrible thing to be, would have noticed right away that their work disappeared. And I don't think this union busting, which is detestable, would have been allowed. The hatred for unions in this country by people who should be in them is shocking to me.
Well, part of that happened as a function. I think. I mean, the sort of the spiral down from unions, I think, started frankly in the '70s, or the late '60s, '70s, where you had that cleave between the social emancipation left, if you will, and the economic left. And in some respects, what we're seeing today, which I think is somewhat encouraging, is that it's sort of that coming back together, although with a much more anemic union movement by multiples of five or seven. We just have a couple of just literally a couple minutes, and I can't thank you enough for staying with me, because it's just I love to hear you talk. But let's just, if we continue on this track where we have an incredibly ultra rich, and then the majority, the vast, overwhelming majority of people down at the bottom, you know about the rich psyche as well as anyone I know who's willing to talk about it. What happens to those rich people? What I mean, does it even begin to register them, or do they just continue on enjoying what they have?
You know, what we have now in this country is something that the country, in my opinion, was founded to destroy, which is we have the irrevocably rich. You know, we have, rich people who are irrevocably rich. They are incredibly, shockingly, stupidly rich, and they have manipulated the entire society to the point where they get people who don't even agree with them to call estate taxes death taxes, to, this is how they keep the money. This is why we had that little war with England, by the way, to begin with. So, I think it doesn't look great to me unless people tell the truth. And one thing people should stop believing is that there are two kinds of rich people. There's not two kinds of rich people. There's not Warren Buffett, who says, I want to pay more taxes, is not, some sort of delightful rich person. Warren Buffett has a stupid amount of money, and he is keeping that stupid amount of money. And, he may be a nicer person, I don't know him, than some other rich person, but basically people's interests. Here's the thing. Here's my final answer. People used to identify by class. And I don't mean like class in England, but people used to, think of themselves in connection to people who were in the same economic class as they were. And then at a certain point, everyone started identifying up. And the way they did this was to get the average person, the majority of people, to identify with other aspects of themselves. Race, sexuality, gender, all these things. Multiculturalism was a tremendous present to these Republicans and to these rich people, a tremendous present, because it took up 30 years while everyone sliced and diced themselves up into these little groups that have nothing to do with public life, that really have to do with your private life. And so to me, the worst thing that happened was the many things that are public and many things that are private change places. People don't even know the difference anymore. So that is something that has to go back. People have to understand the difference between public and private, and stop demanding things for their private life and demand things for their public life.
Fran Lebowitz, I believe you're a national treasure, and I can't thank you enough for coming on today and having this conversation with me. And I hope to do it again soon.